We got a room full of people here tonight.
Awesome. How's it going,
Right.
guys?
Let me just turn up the volume. Can you keep talking?
Yeah, for sure. You guys hear me? Testing, testing.
Yes.
I like the flag, by the way. Very
Oh,
nice.
cool. Well, how is it in New York right now? What's the weather like over there?
It's not too bad. It's pretty warm actually. I heard it's warm in Toronto, warm in Waterloo lately. So yeah, it's warm here too. Um, yeah, we were just at the one of the bars here, Pub Key. It's the one where Trump did the lightning transaction just last night or the other night. So that was pretty cool. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Welcome, Spencer.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it in person, guys. We're just raising in New York right now, so we'll be back soon. But I'll be there in person on the 29th, so that'll be cool.
Amazing. So I
Awesome.
think we're ready to get started with the meeting. And Matt has our magic words to open and close the meeting. So
Oh yes, you did send me that. Yeah. So let's see, what is it? Uh I'm speaking as Satoshi now. No, just kidding. We will now begin our study of Bitcoin. The meeting is now open. There we go.
So Matt, first I just want you to tell us what do you remember of BU 111?
I remember New Venture. That was fun. We did we did what project did we do? It was like analytics in like retail stores or something. Yeah, New Venture was fun. How many people here are in BU 111 right now? Okay, okay, we got a
Okay, good.
couple.
Yeah,
Not bad,
cool.
not bad.
It's such an infamous course and a relatable thing to talk about. So uh maybe to start, would you like to tell us about the first time that you heard about Bitcoin and learned about Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, my dad actually originally got me into Bitcoin back in 2014. He's a bit of a gold bug, and so Bitcoin was like particularly interesting to him. And he's not a tech guy at all. And so I basically he was like, "Hey, I want to get into this Bitcoin thing, but I don't know how to do the tech." So I helped him out, buying things on the exchange. And then putting that from like Canadian dollars into Bitcoin and whatnot. So yeah, that way back in 2014. And then honestly, I forgot about it for a couple of years. It wasn't until I went to I was in Waterloo Laurier. I was in the double degree program, computer science and business. I was at WCH actually first year, and learned about it. Like got reintroduced into it again because there was a big Ethereum presence actually in Waterloo because obviously Vitalik went there. But was got back into Bitcoin around that time, around 2017. Yeah.
Amazing. So you mentioned that first you got back into Ethereum. So you were working with Ethereum for a while. What were you doing on Ethereum? And then what made you eventually step across the floor, so to speak, from being in Ethereum, crypto, Web3 over to being a Bitcoiner? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, yeah, I think so we were really I guess what happens with Ethereum oftentimes is like a lot of programmers, a lot of developers, like Ethereum is particularly interesting because it's like, hey, you can actually build things, right? And everyone thinks you can't build anything with Bitcoin. It's a pet rock. But so we were experimenting with building like debt instruments, like lending and borrowing on top of Ethereum at the time. There had been like some stable coins that were issued. And then what we did was I actually started working on a team. I actually got an internship at Consensus. Um, oh, you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry, there's just more people joining on
Okay, no worries.
ask anyone else to be joining to mute their mics for now.
Sounds good. Yeah, and then what happened was I started working at Consensus on the Liquidity team, and we were doing actually cross-chain swaps between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And there was a couple folks on the team that were actually more like Bitcoin maximalists, so they were very like fond of Bitcoin. And kind of the more that they talked about Bitcoin, the more I got interested in Bitcoin and realized that Bitcoin is actually a lot more programmable than people think. And so we got started building more with Bitcoin at the time. So yeah.
Cool. So you started building with Bitcoin. What was the first thing that you built on Bitcoin after doing so many dApps on Ethereum? What was the first thing you built?
Yeah, well, the first thing I worked on with that team was just being able to swap between Bitcoin and Ethereum. So what that looked like was, funny enough, one of the guys on the team, he was from South Africa. He was paid in Ethereum, and one of the reasons he wanted to build this product is he got paid in Ethereum, like as part of the consensus like company, and but he actually wanted Bitcoin. So we wanted a way to be able to swap that really easily. So we built a swapping mechanism. You could swap between like Ethereum and Bitcoin, or between a stable coin and Bitcoin. And it'll all be done like without having to use an exchange. It would be done trustlessly. So that was the first thing we built. And then after that, we actually experimented with building a lending product where folks were able to lock their Bitcoin as collateral and then get a loan in a stable coin. So we had a locking mechanism like directly on the Bitcoin chain itself. Yeah.
Uh, Directly onto Bitcoin. Oh, do you have a question? Oh, okay. If anybody wants to ask a question for Matt, just mention and we'll hand the mic over. That's really cool. Now, what you're most famous for today, I know you've appeared on the Stephen Livera podcast. You know, you're all over the internet with your application Atomic Finance. How did you go from being an employee to the CTO of a company that is raising venture capital money in New York City?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as I mentioned, I started as an intern at Consensus, and then what happened was we were on the side, we were also working on this lending application, and we actually went through a whole process. We're really interested in building this idea. We wanted to build like the Bitcoin backed loan idea, and we actually tried like multiple venues to actually go and get money. We actually went. If anyone's familiar with Y Combinator, we applied there. They're an incubator in San Francisco, and we applied down there to get funding originally. Flew all the way down to SF. We were the first interview of the day. Got rejected. Usually, what they do is they give startups like 200K, and you go down there for 3 months, and you get to build your startup. So we got rejected by them. We also tried getting internal funding as well within Consensus. We're like, hey, what if we join this one other team and we get funding from you guys in order to build the business? And they said, yeah, it sounds really interesting, but no. So finally, there was actually a pitch day at Consensus to get like funding for new projects. And so we signed up for that. We pitched our idea of building Bitcoin-backed loans, and they were really excited about it. And so we actually got funding, but at the time it was actually funding to be an internal team within the company. And right after we pitched and we got accepted as a team, they actually like cut 13% of the entire company. And it was 50%, 50 of the Canadian company, which meant like literally the office went from being filled with like 20 people every day to like almost empty overnight. And we're like, oh, well, they're obviously going to cut our funding as well, but they didn't. And what we were concerned about is like, oh, is our equity actually going to be okay? And so we basically argued back and forth with them, and they just ended up investing in us. Like, they took 10% of the company and gave us, our pre-seed funding. So, and that's what kind of started off the entire company. Yeah.
Were you the only computer programmer on the team?
I was, yeah. There was actually my co-founder at the time, he was a developer as well. But he was more, I guess, business minded, and so I was the more technical guy. So I was doing like at the time I had been doing like programming on Bitcoin and programming on Ethereum, and so I had a bit of experience with that, and so like that kind of transition made a lot of sense for me continuing to kind of build out the protocol and build out the application around it. Yeah.
Interesting. What I'm still trying to wrap my mind around here is like you were a student, and then now
Mhm.
you're working this internship, but then you're saying, oh, I'm just going to go to SF and pitch my idea to these venture capitalist investors and ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Uh, can you walk us through some of like the mindset of like how do you gear up to be like, yeah, my product is worth it, and here's the money. Like you ask for the money, what's the money going to pay for? Your own salary as you're building it out, hiring more people? What are the types of things that you consider when you're putting together a pitch deck, and how do you make that something that a VC would be interested in?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the timing and like and what you're building. So at the time, like I always knew that I wanted to build like my own thing. Like I was always really interested in that. I'd always been working on like side projects for myself. started a company like before that actually. Um, it was kind of a machine learning startup actually. Like teaching students how to effectively public speak using machine learning. So I had a bit of experience with that before. And so I knew I wanted to do my own thing, but I knew that I also wanted to work in like Bitcoin and blockchain. Like I had been interested in that since originally since 2014. And I think like really like doing a startup, it's really just like having like faith in yourself that like you have the skills and you have the idea to be able to go and execute on an idea. And I think at the time as well, like we got really lucky in terms of like myself working on that cross-chain team because I think it was something that gave me a lot of unique skills. I think it's good to go into a job where you not like don't go into the job that's going to get you like the most like highest paying. Well, unless that's your goal. Like some people have different goals. Some people's goal is just to get the highest paying job possible. But if you have a goal of like, oh hey, like I'm interested in like building my own thing, go for the job that's going to give you unique skills that's going to allow you to like build something. And I don't even think like that was even my purpose at the time. Um, but like that's kind of how it ended up. And I got some unique skills working for that particular team that was doing that cross chain development that then like gave us some unique skills to be able to actually go and pitch the idea. And I think it was a narrative that really resonated. So it's like really just comes down to like having a bit of faith in yourself, like believing that you have a unique advantage and testing that, right? Like going out there and talking to people and saying, "Hey, is this a good idea? Like, would you pay for this?" Um, and then like, yeah, I mean, in terms of pitching, like what you really need to do is get surrounded by like-minded founders, right? So if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. So you need to surround yourself with people that have done this before, right? Like if you want to go and be a startup founder, you need to surround yourself that have with people that have like built their own startups themselves and then learn from them of like what the process was and what they needed to do to pitch and how to refine your pitch in order to be able to go out there and get investment. Yeah.
How has your pitch been refined since you first did it all those years ago compared to the pitches that you're doing this week in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, we had to refine it again because we hadn't pitched in so many years. So we had to go through like I think every time you go through a similar process, you have to, we went through a lot of refinement with founders like way back then, and then we did a similar process this time, except instead of talking with founders, we were actually doing it with our existing investors, and so they were helping us through the pitch deck. But you got to do that every time. You have to like if you just like sit in a room by yourself and like don't talk to anybody and like think that you're going to come out with a good pitch, like it's not going to happen. You have to talk to people, you have to pitch it to them, and then they're going to like point out certain things that like don't make sense or need to be improved or fixed. Yeah.
Cool. Now we're talking a lot about pitching and you're going to investors for your app, but can you just explain like what actually is atomic finance? Like let's say that I hold Bitcoin, I have Bitcoin in cold storage on a wallet somewhere. What's the point of your app and why would I ever use it?
Yeah, for sure. So the main point of atomic finance is to allow for folks to be able to have a way to earn returns on their Bitcoin that is transparent. So the example I like to give is like if you're getting yield on your Bitcoin and you don't know where the yield is coming from, you are the yield, right? Like, and that's what happened, right? That's what happened with BlockFi. That's what happened with Celsius. All these companies that were offering, hey, get 8% on your Bitcoin, they, disappeared overnight and people lost a lot of Bitcoin and a lot of money in those solutions. So our main solution there is instead of you going out there and getting some type of yield by lending it to somebody, you can earn a return on your Bitcoin by investing it in algorithmic strategies that have been back tested. So the basic idea is, you can use derivatives basically if anyone's in finance, they might be familiar with options. The basic idea is you're selling a particular instrument and you're receiving a premium on that. Now, the key thing is there is a risk, right? Everything has a risk. There's no free lunch. And the risk is, if the Bitcoin price goes up dramatically, you might end up with less Bitcoin. But as long as when that position is taken, the Bitcoin price stays stagnant or goes down, then you earn a premium on that and you earn more and more Bitcoin over time. And so that's basically kind of what we're trying to solve for people. It's just an alternative way for them to earn a return and not actually have to give away custody of their Bitcoin, right? They hold their key at all times. Yeah.
So I hold my key and I go to your app, and then I transferring my Bitcoin over to Atomic Finance?
Yeah, so we don't actually take custody of your Bitcoin. What
Yeah.
we do is like if folks are familiar with Ethereum, like it has the concept of smart contracts. Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, but it actually has, well, it has a type of smart contract. It's called it's called a discrete log contract or a DLC for short. And all it is really is just a it's like a Bitcoin Oracle contract. It's a simple contract that exists on Bitcoin where basically you have a key, your counterparty has a key, right? And it's basically a two of two, what's called a multi-sig, so a multi-signature wallet. So a two of two multi-signature wallet where you both enter your funds into that, and then the instrument that you invest in, it can be like a bet. Like say two people are betting on like Trump versus Kamala, right? Like me and Matthew, we could go into a bet. One of us bets on Trump and the other one bets on Kamala. And on November, I think it is 5th, the Oracle would basically report on that on the outcome of that event and say, hey, either Trump won or Kamala won, and then that would validate a transaction that's created off chain that allows for one of us to unlock the funds and win it. So you can use that for a bet. You can use that for like futures contracts, for options contracts. So you can basically create derivatives on top of Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, but it has the capability to do these types of contracts, which is what makes this possible. Yeah.
I did some digging into DLCs. Is it true that this has only been possible since around 2021 because of the Taproot update? Is this a new feature on Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's actually not true. It was actually possible since SegWit. So it's actually been possible since 2017. And the reason for that is because a guy named Lloyd Fernier, and a couple others, I think basically they discovered a particular type of like signature scheme that you could use on top of Bitcoin, which made this possible. But Taproot basically makes it cheaper. It makes it cheaper to do. So we actually still use the SegWit version. We haven't updated to Taproot yet. So that's something that we'll likely be doing in the future. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, you've chosen the path of being a founder. So does that mean that you go to the venture capitalist and your business is making money and then you pay yourself a salary?
That, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. And this is something that I think is really cool about Bitcoin and really all cryptocurrency is that so many people take initiative to build your own projects. And the solution is not only just being an employee for somebody else. So you can go out there, you can build your own project, even on Bitcoin, raise venture capital money, and then there's your project right there. We're creating the jobs in this emergent industry. I think that's really cool. And that's something very admirable about the work that you've done, especially as a Laurier alumni.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the other thing too that's really interesting is there's multiple different paths here, right? There's the path of, okay, well, you can go and create your own company that's going to be venture backed, where the aim of it is to be profitable. There's also people out there that have gone and basically created nonprofit organizations. A good example of that is BTC Pay Server. They're kind of like Shopify Pay or like WooCommerce Pay for like Bitcoin, where you can like integrate it into your e-commerce shop really easily and allow for payments to be done. They're a nonprofit, and he's raised a bunch of money from folks for his nonprofit. There's like open source developers that contribute back to Bitcoin. There's like there's always like need for like project managers, product managers, or business development folks for all the different like Bitcoin things that are being built. So there's a lot of like different potential paths that you can take in Bitcoin. Yeah,
Yeah, I want to take this opportunity. I'm going to share my screen for a moment and just walk through something on screen.
sounds good.
So I've been working on have you worked at all with BDK?
Uh, yeah, I did briefly, but not that much. You created a Rust Bitcoin wallet application, right?
I'm working on it, yeah, and I'm doing it as a web wallet. So it's a Bitcoin wallet that you can access through a web browser, so nobody can shut you out. Like no app store can restrict your application. no Microsoft Windows cannot take the exe. Mac OS cannot say, oh, this is a vulnerable program. This is problematic. We need to block this from your computer. So the web is still something that's very open, and you can always access a web browser on any device. So
Yeah,
just
it's a PWA, right?
yes, exactly. Yes.
Nice.
Um, can you see my screen right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here is Matt's website of his product right here. And then I wanted to show here on BDK, so on their website. So when I click here and go on Foundation, it says here the Bitcoin Dev Kit Foundation is established as a US nonprofit corporation to promote the development of access to the BDK. Now, on the supporters page, you can see that there's these organizations like Spiral, OpenSats, Vintium, B-Trust, and these organizations are paying grants so that developers can work on these projects. So these developers here are the current grantees full-time. So here we have Evan Lynn, Thunder Biscuit, Matthew Ramsden. Matthews seem to be really overrepresented in Bitcoin. You notice my name, and yours too. But these people are paid through grants, and there's these organizations like OpenSats, here's their websites, and then you can apply if you're a Bitcoin developer or you want to contribute to something in open source. Even it doesn't have to be computer programming. There's a lot of room for other types of jobs too. And you can apply for a grant on their website and say, here's the work I've done, here's my existing contributions to open source, here's what I've done to help further the Bitcoin community, and you can be paid in order to work on accelerating Bitcoin adoption. And then I also wanted to show this firm. Are you familiar with 1031? It's Matt Odell's venture capital firm. So here's a lot of familiar Bitcoin products out there that are funded through venture capitalists. We have Noster clients. We have, River is a popular name, Swan, Unchained Capital. And these are all various different companies that people might be familiar with. And through a combination of grants and venture capitalists, there's a whole new Bitcoin ecosystem coming forward. So I just wanted to show these couple web pages right here. Back to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, 1031. That's also yeah, Marty Bent's with the firm as well. He does the what is the Marty Bent podcast, the TFTC, Tales from the Crypt. It's a really good podcast talking about like Bitcoin and macro. So definitely recommend that. And then the one that you showed, Spiral was also on there as well. That you showed, Matthew, which was they're also, if you guys know, like Cash App in the United States,
Yes.
it's or Square. It's a subsidiary of Square basically. They're giving out grants all the time. The Thunder Biscuit guy you mentioned on there, I actually met him down in Miami. He's working on some cool, like it's even like simple stuff like for example, they're like the BDK library. Basically, what he's doing is he's creating a bunch of bindings to a bunch of different languages. So BDK is written in Rust, but they want to be able to support like JavaScript, TypeScript, like Golang, like being able to use it in all these different languages. And he's just creating the bindings for that to work. And he got a grant for working on that. So there's so many different pieces of the puzzle.
How far do you want to take atomic finance? How far are you going to take it?
Yeah, I think like for us, like we were like our goal right now is just to be able to scale it up. So we're like right now at like I think like 200 Bitcoin locked or so in the app, and we're just building some additional infrastructure to be able to scale it up. So I'd love to scale that up, quite a bit, like as much as we possibly can. Um, Obviously there's a limit to everything. I'm not going to gobble up 21 million Bitcoin. But if we can get, from 200 to 25K or, 50K Bitcoin, I think that would be awesome. So, that's the goal long term.
That's a really big dollar value to have 200 Bitcoin locked up in your application. How much is that in US or Canadian dollars?
Yeah, in Canadian dollars, I think it's like, 15 million or 16 million or something. Um, yeah, well, we like to say it's only five Toronto houses. So
That's cool. And I trust you wrote all the unit tests.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the nice things about Bitcoin as well is that, like in Ethereum land, like everyone writes their smart contracts and then they go get them audited. They end up spending like $100,000, $200,000 on audits. One of the nice things in Bitcoin is like there's a really good open source community, and so like we collaborated with another team to actually build like write the software for DLCs, write out the unit tests, and like reviewed each other's code. And so that's particularly helpful because it saves on that huge cost that you could be incurring with a massive audit that you have to get done. Yeah.
I think a common misconception that we hear about all the time is that all the money is in crypto and there's not a lot of money to be made in Bitcoin. So just I'm curious from your perception, from the things that you've seen traveling across America, talking with venture capitalists, how would you say that is that a statement that you agree with or disagree with? And can you tell me about how the tide is changing back towards Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like a lot of people got rich in the recent years from like altcoins. But the reality is right now a lot of things are shifting back to Bitcoin. So like in 2015 we had the introduction of Ethereum. A lot of people got rich from that. Like I think there was a lot of like kind of anger towards Bitcoin because you couldn't easily build things with it. But I think more recently that has shifted, and maybe it's interesting because it's partly due to the ETFs and partly not. But Bitcoin dominance is now rising. So Bitcoin dominance used to be all the way down at 40%, 40% of the coin market cap. I think it's up to 65% now. Um, right now, like everyone and their dog is trying to build things on top of Bitcoin, which is crazy to see. There's like 80 different like Bitcoin layer twos that are trying to be built. Ironically, they're all built using like most of them are built using the Ethereum virtual machine. There's a couple that aren't that are really unique. But a lot of money is going towards like coming back to building on Bitcoin right now. Like there's companies that are raising like, $80 million, $100 million to build like, you know, um, applications on top of Bitcoin or a layer two on top of Bitcoin and things of that nature. Yeah.
So we can see the money is moving towards Bitcoin. We can see that, we're aligned with the mission of Bitcoin. I was wondering if you could share for an example of each somebody who is technical and interested in computer programming, and then also for somebody who is non-technical and they want like a business person type of role. How do each of those people fit into what's coming up in the next couple of years in Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the key thing here is like everybody thinks like, oh, well, a lot of developers think if I build the perfect product, then like build it and they will come. Like I think everyone has that kind of idea in their back of their mind. And then you go and build something and then they don't come. And you realize that distribution is everything, right? So getting it in front of people's eyes is like the most important thing that you can possibly do. And so like that's why business development is super important. Like making those partnerships, getting those LOIs, getting those connections set up with other companies. I think a good example of this is there's recently been so like Lightning Network exists for the Bitcoin network, and that's like to allow for payments to happen really seamlessly. There's a new payment network called Arc that's coming out. That's actually it interoperates really nicely with Lightning. But like one of my buddies got like he just started as one of the business developer guys at Arc in order to create those connections, in order to make to set up the initial conversations, in order to get enough capital for this to get off the ground, in order to get the initial companies that are going to actually use the product. He's going and having those conversations every day in order to get that started. Um, there's lots of like large OTC desks as well. That's over the counter trading, where you've got to have like business relationships with other exchanges and liquidity providers in order to be able to have enough capital to be able to run some of these operations. So I say that's where like the BD side really comes in. Is you need those folks that are building those relationships, that are connecting these companies together to get stuff happening, especially if you're a B2B company for sure. Um, and then for the developer side, I mean, yeah, there's lots of opportunities for the developer side because like not that many people know like Bitcoin script, not that many people know like how to program with Bitcoin or how to create a Bitcoin wallet. Um, and there's lots of like opportunities in like the building out a Bitcoin layer two, or building on top of Lightning, or building on top of Arc that are coming to fruition. I would say in that domain, like definitely learn Rust. There's a lot of like Bitcoin developers that are getting up to speed on Rust development. And Golang as well. Like lots of folks are using that. Like the largest, like the majority of the Lightning nodes that are out there are all built are all using LND, which is built using Go. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Lightning Labs.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Does anybody from the audience have any questions that they would like to ask Matt? Okay. Uh, Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us this evening, and we look forward to your in-person visit. Is there any final message that you would like to give to university students about what to expect? Like what is going to happen next in Bitcoin? What's the future? What does the future of Bitcoin look like, and why is that important for young people?
Yeah, I think I don't know, in a time where like from a just a macro perspective, in a time where like a lot of like housing is becoming more expensive, the Canadian economy is going downhill. I think like Bitcoin's a really good, escape vehicle, and I think it's just going to grow. I think that like as Michael Saylor says, like there is no second best, right? There's all these other like cryptos that exist, but I think over time more and more capital is going to go into Bitcoin. And so for you guys, like if you're looking at your career and you're looking at like where should I end up and you want to get a head start, I think like looking to the Bitcoin ecosystem, looking at the jobs that are available, figuring out what skills you need to learn to get there, I think that can get you ahead of a lot of people. If you're just going out there as a regular like business person or software engineer and you're competing against everybody else and you're not unique, then it's going to be really like, jobs are getting even harder with AI coming to fruition. But if you're like, hey, I actually have like Bitcoin experience and I've built these things with Bitcoin, and you're going and applying to like a particular company where that's really valuable, then I think you really have a unique advantage in being able to do that. As an example, one of my friends, he got a really high paying job down here in New York, working for Square actually or Cash App because he had that experience like building on top of Bitcoin, and they needed people with those exact skills. If he had just been competing against everybody else who was like a software engineer, he might not have had a chance. But because he had those unique skills, he had a huge advantage. So definitely look into it if you're interested. Yeah, I think that's about it. And if anyone else also has any other questions, like I'm sure Matthew will give you my contact info. Feel free to reach out anytime. Always happy to answer questions about Bitcoin or Bitcoin jobs or anything of that nature.
Yeah, something that like a catchphrase I really like is like just as every company had to become an internet company, every company that accepts payments, which is basically any commercial business, will have to become a Bitcoin company. So even I was talking to someone the other day, and we were saying even there's immense demand for somebody who is an implementation consultant, even somebody who just knows how do Bitcoin wallets work? How do I manage my private keys? How do I onboard someone to Bitcoin? How can I report? How can I do the very basics of Bitcoin bookkeeping? This is something that will have a huge place in the future, even though we don't really value those skills at an exact job position today. That is definitely going to be a fundamental of finance in the future.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like even if you're you're thinking of like, hey, I want to be a lawyer or I want to be like an accountant, like the folks like in those professions that also know like Bitcoin and crypto and how to deal with the tax situations around that are, very highly paid. Basically earn a premium on their job for knowing those specific things. And so I think that's only going to grow.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Awesome. My pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you guys in person.
Likewise.
Awesome.
See you later.
Perfect. Have a great
Bye.
night.
You too.